Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode. I wanted to speak about a very interesting concept, and it was honestly inspired by a quote from Plato, where Plato says time is the moving image of eternity. Now, when I say the title is Reality is Older Than Time, for me, there is two aspects to time. One aspect of time has to do with our inner sense of change, and one aspect of time has to do with our outer sense of change. And what that means is that the outer change changes something within us that we, in some sense, say time is moving forward. So when I find that when Plato came up with that quote, time is the moving image of eternity, it's as if he was wondering what is an eternal force. What is the closest thing that we have to eternity? Something that is endlessly going, something that is of a infinite agenda. And so Plato considered that to be time. Now there's other notions because a concept can be given any value, but some concepts hold a secret value, a hidden value, an unspeakable, undescribable source behind the meaning. I'm pretty much visualizing Plato probably sitting on a rock back in the day. Plato's sitting on a rock, he's looking at this world, and he sees that time goes on. And I personally considered what else can have a sort of eternal aura to it. It's like change. The only thing that doesn't change is change. The only thing uninfluenced by time is time. The thing that remains is kind of like space. There was another Greek philosopher by the name of um, Heraclitus, and he says, no man steps in the same river twice, and it is not the same river, and it is not the same man. In every moment of existence, there is a sort of novelty, and how we adjust the novelty is by having reference points. And reference points are certain images contained in sort of subjective significance. That means once the subjective significance of a phenomena changes for you, that phenomena is like an emptiness repainted, refilled. Marcus Aurelius tells us the soul is color is dyed with the color of its thoughts. And time is a thought that, in some sense, is coloring or making the world seem more of a meaningful machine. You know, it's very interesting because Isaac Newton. I don't know if it was before Isaac Newton or what, but pretty much at some point people began looking at this universe as a room, as if it is contained, as if like it can't just be one thought. You can't just call it life. It has now become a world, galaxies, solar systems, and various classifications, as if we've cut up one cake, you know. And in some sense, we feel everybody is experiencing truth. There have been some moments in life where I have learned from my personality. My personality is kind of like stepping stones. I don't consider who I am in one moment as the ultimate version of me. This is why guilt began to fade from me. But it didn't mean I became insensitive. It didn't mean I became insensitive or numb to my memory. What happened was that I became a watcher of my thoughts. And I'm not joking when I say this, you know. Even though in these talks I'm playful, but you are watching your thoughts. Anytime you speak, you're in some sense a part of your own audience. And that's the unique thing. Oftentimes when I give these talks, I'm kind of hearing what I'm saying, and it's just like the same way that the words enter your ears and they provoke images. For me, my own words are constantly provoking images, and it eventually gets a certain dynamism. Now, my experience with thought, before I even talk about emotions, is that our thoughts move in duality. When we look at time, time is a change. It's an oscillation between existence and non-existence as far as our attentions are considered. Do you see? That means in deep sleep, you don't care what time it is. You don't care about the laws of nature because there's nothing. And so we see that the value of our lifetime is found in our consciousness. So it is the relationship of um, the core of our attention with the edge of our world that makes us feel we are contained or not. And so for me, I hovered in this domain of knowledge, in this bunker of knowledge, as if beliefs were a sort of protection from a changing world, you know? And when I was younger, I felt like people judged me. But I will tell you, oh my God, this world judges you. It's not just people. Religion, in some sense, I have my agreements and disagreements, but fundamentally, I find religion was made in some sense to preserve the unknown. Because when you look at a religious community, you see all those people are in some sense they have accepted their truth through a certain text, which is considered divinely revealed. Okay, now what does this text say? This text says the creator is in the creation, outside of creation. It is all that can be conceived, as if we are God's thoughts. We are made in the reflection of where we have in some sense uh, entered the world. Now, for me, when I was young, like I'm telling you, I was till the age 7, I was in Iran, and even though I didn't have like as much of a sophisticated philosophical speculation as I have now, you know, when you're younger, you just go with the program. When you get older, you wonder about the program. When you get even wise, when wisdom enters your life, you wonder about the programmer. When you wonder about the programmer, you're not giving the power of intelligence to a thought beyond the clouds that has a long beard. You know, you begin to see that there is an awareness wherein every birthday you've blown a candle, you've kind of been like a sort of hidden witness of every moment. And so we don't just witness phenomena in our waking state, we also witness phenomena in our dream states. And the relationship that dreams have is that when you wake up, dreams are in some sense the container. Sorry, not when you wake up, dreams are poured into the container of reality. You justify based on the waking state what the dream state meant to you. But when you were in that dream state, the free will administered itself based on that image, that realness. So we can say, like in the Rig Vedas, there's a quote that says, the Rig Vedas are an ancient Vedic text, that says the mind is a slave to the real. Now, what does that mean? The mind is a slave to the real. That means wherever your attention goes, world creation begins behind your eyes. Right now, I look at this laptop. I cannot even deny the image because it just enters my sight. So when I look at this laptop, my attention, whatever, it's like we have access to various intensities of data. What we call our primary attention, like when you're in class, the teacher says, "Pay attention, kid." That attention is more intense. That means the situations uh, stability has now been pushed towards a sort of flexibility. So that flexibility makes you urge towards paying attention to whatever you have to pay attention when it's extreme. For example, I say this often: nobody is stupid in an emergency. You see, so what that means is that the intensity of the situation brings about the greater abilities of your response. You know, and so when you look at a lot of greatness in this life, it was like when you look at a lot of inventors. I'm always fascinated by inventors. For me, they are as profound as poets. The inventor did something very similar to what I studied, or in some sense kind of read about ancient Vedanta and ancient Vedic practice. And so when you look at the books such as the Srimad Bhagavatam or the Bhagavad Gita or the different Gitas, there's many Gitas. When you look at these books, what you begin to notice is that what is being advised about the meditation is a concentration on a single point. So you can say religion was a sort of mass meditation given to people. What is the meditation? A meditation, pretty much, we are ceremonial creatures, whether we like it or not. This is why when we get bored, we go do something. Whatever we do has a sort of value, has a sort of evocation potency. When I say evocation potency, that means the way your attention engages with the moment is how the mind is being its body. And so when we get into deeper, because the concept of time has a macrocosmic implication, it's not that just this changing universe is occurring, for us. It is occurring for everything in this place. You see? And so I find that prior to the development of language, our ancestry very courageously had to acknowledge a world they had no idea of. So pretty much you wake up in a room, you have no idea how it's here. Now you go look at people on this planet and you see that there's different histories, methodologies, and approaches. And what has happened is that when you look at civilization, when you look at even education, like when I wondered, like, what are universities writing about? you know and I began to see it's a sort of group meditation where one person comes and contributes to a branch of knowledge. Then after that person leaves or goes and does whatever their life, or in some sense they pass away, and eventually another kid is born and comes in some sense deepens the search. So pretty much we are at first given the access. What the data we're given is very theoretical. Everything said to you is theoretical until it is experienced. Now, sometimes even when you experience something, like for example, you go to a magic show, there is a sort of illusion of your senses, as if the way the senses are receiving the data, they're making it seem like another moment that was real in your past. You see, this is why there comes astonishment. So for me, it was like life began as a moment of attributeless presence. And this attributeless presence, through a sort of cyclical waking up, sleeping, like eyes open, eyes blinking, and through that sort of oscillation of seeing the world, not seeing the world, there came this subconscious identity, which most people think is their soul. This subconscious identity is very profound because it stands in the same way as time does. As if time is here, but we can't see it. You know? We have to look at our watch to remember it, as if it's something that's not naturally known until we pay attention, or our attention is found in a sort of way. Sometimes you look at something until it gives you meaning. So what does that mean? That means you look at a Sudoku, like that. I don't know if it's Chinese or Japanese. That Asian puzzle, kind of like number word puzzle. And so that Sudoku, you look at it until you suddenly see the alignment, until you suddenly see a pattern that has more value. So what life has been, especially what inventors have done, is that they have a question has also indirectly made them have a single pointed concentration on the way the world is. As if when Einstein looked at the sky and was wondering how it's blue, He looked at it until he found. He saw how the atmosphere changes, how the light appears to the eyes of the creatures on this planet. So what can be said also is that due to language requiring a dualistic framework to exist, you need thingness and sort of nothingness. You need the space between the words, or you would not notice the words. You see what I mean? And this space between the words is the same way that the person finds themselves in, even in society, requiring engagement, but then requiring absence from the engagement. And so, as language has a dualistic framework, because language is referring to things, it is a sort of method of individualization. Without language, it's very hard to be a person. You're just a moving phenomenon. It is language that has allowed us to sculpt, the dreams of our minds into the realities that we can accomplish. So, due to this dualism, we got to ask ourselves: is it all just one changing moment, and we are just being conscious of these changes and then creating time, or is it actually a movement? Is time an arrow or a circle? You know, is it a circular arrow or is it a direct arrow? When we look at the inner reality, it seems circular. It seems that where the image entered your mind, that is where the image is staying. Albert Einstein has this quote where he says, "You cannot solve a problem from the same level of consciousness that created it." So sometimes you can't have a new experience unless the way you're conscious of the moment shifts. And it either shifts through a recognition of this preferenceless witness behind the scene, or in some sense, it shifts through the objective phenomena forcefully changing you. That means whether you like to change your ideas or not, whether you think you believe something and that's it, I will tell you, nature will change your mind. Either internally you will change quicker, or you will externally change quicker. Back in the day, before there was a lot of subjective accumulation of conceptualization, before we actually began writing, speaking, and just communicating properly, we, in some sense, how can I say it? It's like it was just the ocean, and not a ship had ever sailed on this ocean. And the first people that made a ship, they sailed on the ocean, and then they began to see the profound metaphor of conscious existence. There is this vast existence, and your consciousness is riding the waves through the biological positioning it's in. So for me, when I wonder about time, it can go many ways. I can think of time being a sort of cultural requirement, a sort of social requirement, as if when you have no obligations, you don't need to wear a watch. But when you have obligation, when things need to go through a certain process order where you have to acknowledge certain ways that you need to be, like certain moments you need to be present, then that's a different sort of articulation. It's like time is as necessary as it's necessary. For me, I found it kind of humorous. Um, when you look at Zen Buddhism, or you look at ancient Vedanta, you see the people caught on to this idea as if, like this, what we talk about now, or Elon Musk talks currently about, the simulation theory. He says there's 1 in a billionth chance we're in a simulation, which is like a video game indistinguishable from reality or something, created by future civilizations or something, and now we're that civilization. Like, even though there's like these, and we entertain such ideas, but our ancestors, especially when you go into see the roots of philosophy, you see it. They began to catch on that what is here is not the only thing here, as if the like a lot of I can't give it an accurate historical reference, to be honest, but I could say a lot of development and progress has occurred because people notice there is something else aside from what they know. You see? You need the mystery to find the secret, and once you have found the secret, you will access it as the moment is the only place to access it. Behind my eyes, I am the context of the world. In front of my eyes, I am the concept of the world. I have been, when I enter society and when I communicate with people on a daily basis, what I notice is that programs, it's all programs. The younger you are, the more entertained you are by social and cultural programs. The older you get, the more you get entertained by existential and experiential programs. As if like you understand the value of stepping outside of a room you've already seen. And there is, of course, a very profound, when one, like, how would I say, the New Age community, or just a lot of, I don't know, let's say a lot of different traditions about self-inquiry, they focused and concentrated on the ego, and they've kind of said that the ego is an eclipse to the true light of one's being. And their suggestion of the ego has been something like an attention to um, it's like a conscious attention to a subjective form, an abstract form. You know, your ego is not like if I ask you who are you right now, you know, automatically we will assume you're your body, but then it's as if like we want to know your story. And so you see the simultaneity of matter and consciousness, regardless of whatever meaning is generated in the world. It's like there's a simultaneity of how mind is being matter and your matter is wondering about its mind. We are in that position. We are in an evolutionary position where nature is doubting itself. It is doubting its truth. When nature doubts its truth, what occurs is that new dimensions arise. Yet these new dimensions inevitably are bound to integrate with what is in the space. That means if we say the universe is expanding, then and if we consider the whole universe to be a sort of container where certain laws and patterns of the intelligent activity are set into motion, certain forces of nature, as if like, um, Neo from the Matrix might agree with what I'm saying here. It is all about a sort of balance. The yin yang symbol gives us a good clue. The yin yang symbol, like if you don't know what it is, it's pretty much the circle that's divided with an S in the middle. Like, and there's two different dots on each side, and each side has a color, and the dot is the opposite color. The implication of this is that all your dualities are in the same moment. All the good and all this oscillation between chaos and order, civilizations coming into manifestation and leaving manifestation, they are all in the same moment. You cannot know what is good if you don't know what is bad. You cannot know what is bad if you don't know what's good, and I mean experientially. Because mysticism, when like these talks, when I speak, dear listener, I, I, we are interested in direct experience rather than indirect ideology. There is a sort of subtle experience, as if when I tell you, imagine right now like a balloon just hovering beside you in the room. Imagine you imagine a blue balloon, for example, right? Like right now I'm sitting here, I can imagine a blue balloon if it was in this room. Now when I wonder, where is that blue balloon? How come behind, like as my mind I see a blue balloon, yet physically in this moment I don't see a blue balloon. So as if there are two worlds. There is the world of form, and there's the world that's observing form. And so the mind is a simulation upon reality, and sometimes I question if we ever see the physical universe. I feel we don't sometimes. That means I understand Descartes' dualism, but what baffled Descartes, and I don't know if he ever found out or not, but what Descartes, Rene Descartes, this French philosopher, this guy, by the way, is an incredible human being. With the stuff he did, he not only brought the deepest philosophical introspection into the species awareness, but he also was a sort of father of science. When you look at mathematics, the Cartesian plane is, it comes from Rene Descartes' work. And so when Rene Descartes spoke about the concept is dualism, he spoke about the mind-body dualism as if the body and the mind are each in their own world. Now, he, even though they're each in their own world, you need the other to be aware of the other. And of course, Rene Descartes, his main approach was a sort of methodical doubt. This dude was doubting everything to figure out what's going on. That was his method. So if the body is in its own dimension and the mind is in its own dimension, because there was a sort of undeniable materialistic presence, like I can't deny how my body is here right now and I'm being it. Okay? So because there was the body, right? So Rene Descartes thought that what the mind was in some sense had nothing to do with the body, yet both present. Something like this. Now, Rene Descartes thought we are in the body realm, perhaps. But I'm saying that we are actually minds, and physical reality is unknown. There's a sort of uh, occurrence going on that, like, when we look at the light of a star in the sky, that star could be gone. It's just the light reaching your eyes. So in some sense, what is currently happening to the star is unknown, but what the light shows is known. So sometimes the data portrays a view, yet it is not the accurate view. Now, my notion, what I'm trying to kind of communicate here, is that the mind is projecting a body in an unknown way rather than the body projecting a mind in an unknown way. And when I say the mind is an unknown way, because if we honestly think of ourselves too much as matter, our free will become meaningless. You won't care. I think a lot of suicide in developed countries, and of course I shouldn't be speaking about it so blatantly. It's a serious issue. Whenever someone uses a bridge the wrong way, they have failed to see how to use the bridge the right way. In some sense, their free will has become meaningless. They feel they cannot overpower the forces of both culture, society, and nature that are upon them. And so they feel what's an easy way to get rid of discomfort and pain, to just turn off the computer. But it's not as easy, because your mind is not a computer. It is not a, biochemical computer. Your intelligence exists on some level in the dimensions you create, but I feel we are a kind of divine authorization of attention. I feel regardless of what we do, we have no choice. We are eternal. Okay? Let me tell you how I've reached this conclusion. I guess I can explain it with a simple sentence. If divinity, your existence is the proof of your divinity. How you are here and how there is something here is the unique aspect of it all. And so it's so easy to retire into a program of just routine. And I feel like I'm not telling the whole world to change in these talks suddenly, even though sometimes I do share visions I have. But what I'm trying to do in these talks is to kind of suggest to you that where is the temporary happening? Where is the temporary happening? Where is intelligence? If so, if you just take objectivity as the only justifier, there never was intelligence. There never was people. It was all just atoms hovering in empty space. It was just particles in motion. While it's like everything else is just a self-created illusion. This is why we have some people saying free will is an illusion, because they are incredible materialists, denying themselves the greater question of how their eyes move before they open. And in some sense, guys, I find myself very preferenceless. I cannot hold one banner when I see that time conquers everything. And what is time? That means things change so much that the ability of my attention to just be my body is resisted. It's like life is kind of like you're given like a cake or something you're eating, and then halfway they just take it away from you, and there's that sudden like, whoa, where did the pleasantry go? Where did the pleasantness of the experience suddenly go? And that's what I feel. I feel that we should consider ourselves not just people, we should consider ourselves as advanced communicators and pilots of consciousness. The advanced communicator is a term I've developed where I say you start acknowledging yourself as an advanced communication of your universal sector. So you inevitably see the smallest thoughts influence the biggest, and the biggest have always influenced the smallest. The pilot of consciousness is another term I've in some sense originated. And what the pilot of consciousness is, that I am like, as objectively oriented creatures, we study how we are a communication of the moment, how our elements are being us, how the elements of the world are being you. And in regards to your mind, you're a navigation of an attributeless free will. That means your decisions define your will, but prior to you making the decision, there was a force to inspire the decision to be made. That means if we can question we are in a program, most likely we're not just in that program. We are living in an interesting time, a very fascinating moment of history where people have in some sense, many people on this planet have gotten stuck into cyclical programs of survival, as if you got to just do the same thing every day to get by. However, I feel whether technology reaches there first or nature, it is not too far-fetched of an idea to consider that we are not from this planet if we're so keen of moving beyond it. Trust me, I have days that I walk and I'm like, wow, yesterday I had a totally different way I looked at the world, totally different way my memory, my awareness was active. And in moments of suffering, you just become more of a watcher of your moment unless your free will decides to live. You gotta understand the chaos and order are two wings of the bird. They are the two modalities the mind functions. There's this ancient Cherokee story where this grandson runs to his grandfather, who was the chief of the tribe, and the grandfather was in front of all the other tribesmen, other tribe leaders of, you know, that culture. And so what happens is that the grandson says, "Grandpa," and the Native American chief grandpa is like in front of all their chiefs, and the grandson comes and says, "Grandpa, tell me a story." And all the Native American leaders are now judging, you know, the grandpa, like is leader of the tribe. Like how the grandpa, in some sense, like how is he, like what is he gonna say to this kid? And the grandpa looks at the grandson, and the grandson's just so enthusiastic, and the grandpa just kneels to get on eye level with the kid, you know, to grant him a sort of value, as if I can, even though I am not equal to you, but I can stand equal with you, And so the grandpa looks at the grandson and says, "All right, here's the story." The grandpa says, "There's two wolves inside you." The grandson's like, "Whoa." The grandfather says, "There's two wolves inside you. One is white, or one is dark. And these two wolves are, in some sense, one of them represents all the happiness, joy, peace, serenity you can find in this world. And the other represents the chaos, the evil, the suffering, the pain, and whatnot, the negativity. And so the grandson is keenly listening, and the grandfather says, "These two wolves within you are all fighting all the time." And then a question arises in the grandson's mind. He looks at the grandfather and says, "Which wolf wins?" The grandfather gives a very profound answer, which brings a smile to all the tribal leaders. He says, "The one you feed." Your attention goes on negative realities continuing. The pilot is navigating very turbulently. When you see the opportunity of peace leading to the innovation of a creative renaissance, for example, that is, in some sense, your attention being on the order of the universe continuing. And pretty much what humanity is that we are creatures that live in a certain way, and we're alive, and us being here is better than not being here, so the species is continuing. It's as if without human beings, there would be no, you could say, no person who could conceptualize or conceive the world. As if the world strangely was made to be seen, And now we are the eyes that are seeing it. And when we wonder, where is this light? We see it's like you can, like the Vedas kind of suggest this, the Upanishads. They say you cannot know the knower. You cannot know the one that is knowing they know. And that's where the unknown is. There are unknown pillars holding the knowledge of our psyche. And for me, when I looked at the relationship of the conscious mind, subconscious, and the unconscious, I was like, whoa, wait a minute, what is this? And I suddenly noticed, holy shit, my consciousness, who I think I am, imagine it's a circle. Now imagine my subconscious, another circle over my conscious, and then now imagine the unconscious, the greater circle, as if this concentric way of how life's dimensions are kept is very unique, as if your subconscious is the translator of the unconscious, what is unknown, into a knowable form or in a knowable way, which is your consciousness. That means I believe the secret of life is in our subconscious. And so the approaches have been a sort of remembrance or a concentration. That means one can say the efforts of meditation was to penetrate the subconscious, but once they did, they began to see it as a bridge. And there's no point of breaking a bridge. There's no point of trying to get rid of the ego. I don't remember who this was. I think it was this lady. I know it was this woman who said this quote, and it was an incredible quote. She said, like, something like, at first when fear comes, you become a bit like you don't want to engage with the fear, with what is fear, creating that fear. But then the lady said this quote where, like, her wisdom was, when you learn to ride the fear, that's when things get interesting. When you are challenged and you realize you exist to meet the day. Why else are we here? We are here to consciously change with the world. And this conscious change has now led to a point where it exists to a subjective framework and an objective framework, and the watcher of both. One can, one could say God is the intelligent sight that could never die. It is like the word truth will have cannot be even real, you know, unless there is a possibility for it to be. And a lot of things that happen to people, a lot of their karma, I honestly believe, and I don't want to even say believe, but like I feel it's how you're holding the world in your attention. That's how you interpret your karma. That person who says karma is a bitch, that person is seeing that relationship. Our senses kind of exist to translate or transform, or in some sense, allow a metamorphosis of matter into mind, into thought. The objective reality seems to exist to turn into subjectivity. So one can say there is a transference of dimensions. It's not that people grow and change. One can say the dimensions can change as well. And it seems like matter is changing itself into a mind. And so we have people like Terence McKenna speaking about the transcendental object at the end of at the end of time. So what he means is that you begin to see the way you have received information or how your attention is information. Time is the story of the object. But when your experience moves beyond just being an object, then time no longer is the same. Time becomes just multiple dimensions present at the same time, rather than a movement from one point to another point. It becomes a simultaneity. That means your mind experiences past, present, future simultaneously, but your body seems to be just going from the past to the future. So these are important to note. I feel these are important to notice. That your mind is the only true entrance to the known and the unknown. We are a relationship either between various dimensions, or we are one dimension having a relationship with various segments of itself. So what I mean is we are either a collective being, all of us are one collective being that is experiencing individual aspects, or we are various individuals recognizing a sort of collectivity of all the dimensions of life kept at the same time. That means whether there's a concept of a tree in Lord of the Rings, or there's a concept of a tree in just current, like modern day reality, the idea of the tree stands the same in both worlds, even though one world is real and the other is not. A sort of recognition of how Plato said time is the moving image of eternity. It's as if eternity is moving time. It's as if, honestly, space is moving time. And space is moving time not by being a force, by being the greater dimension of the force. Pretty much the story of science can be said how an atom became a man. But mankind is more than atoms. Nothing strengthens you than living for your whole moment, which includes all beings. And whether we like it or not, Whatever moment we are in history, so people begin thinking reality is spiritual, so we have materialistic ideologies gaining more power, and then we have people thinking extremely materialistically, and then suddenly the opposite comes. Since new children are being born, there's always a counterculture. There's always a sort of disagreement with how you have agreed to how the world is because new discoveries are being found. This is why language must be used playfully, because if it is used too seriously, it becomes a blindfold of a belief. There was this Zen story where this man sits on this very beautiful grassland and he's all alone there and he's meditating. He's in some sense paying attention to how his attention is being led. And so as he suddenly realizes something about the true nature of the world. Now, as the Zen story goes, in another dimension, there's this minion, this dark minion. And the dark minion suddenly sees this guy get enlightened, he freaks out, and the minion runs to the Dark Lord. The minion runs to the Dark Lord and says, Dark Lord, this man has just understood the truth about the world. What do we do? And the Dark Lord says, don't worry, because he will probably make a belief out of it. That means the moment we experience something, because we want to add it as part of our story of life, we shape it, we contain it. We cage our experiences in language, and now we feel we're language experiencing things. We feel we are thoughts. We feel we are our name, our idea, rather than recognizing it is constantly changing. In George Orwell's 1984, there's a sentence that says, ignorance is bliss. Ignorance is bliss until you get bored, until you see the edges of the room of that bliss. But the ever-present bliss that ancient Indian culture embraced, especially through the term Sat Chit Ananda, which means conscious existence is blissful. Once you realize you're conscious and there's existence here, a bliss arises in the being. A sort of your free will. You know how your free will exists? Your free will exists because behind everything, all the processes of nature, a part of you has concluded that it is free. You have that's like you are free. That's why there can still be something to do about the situation. That freedom is a sort of audience of your own performance. So one can say that the soul is the viewer, and the body and the thoughts that arise from the body are the view. Yet the viewer is not defined. The audience member that comes to see the actor has nothing to do with the actor. The soul of the soul of the soul, as Attar, this ancient Sufi poet, said, the soul, like this, like, can you imagine that? You know, like there's one level of new age where they say, yo, you're a soul, and the guy's like, wow, I've been waiting for this validation my whole life, new age community style. But there is a sort of deeper notion of the soul that if you have been able to conceive a sort of uh, background intelligence to your moment, or to your physical body, you can see that to the physical body of the universe. One can say the soul of the soul of the soul is the soul of existence. And the soul of existence is how matter is in consciousness, how matter is in attention, in pure awareness. And how pure awareness finds itself in matter. Trust me, we're oscillating, we're creatures of vibration. There's a quote from Nikola Tesla that says, if you want to if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Now, when we think of those things, we strip away the stories and how guilt and pleasure honestly arise from a sort of linguistic simulation that is being carried on. And it's not just language, like people don't just think in language. Language exists because people actually see images behind their eyes. And these images are the root of what the language is pointing to at times. Nikola Tesla has this other quote where he says, antisocial behavior is a trait of intelligence in a world full of conformists. And we can say any new member of society, if they have not studied that society, they in some sense are walking a different way than that society. So pretty much all children are weird. And any member of a new system, when the system has not acknowledged them, they'll be like, okay, this new face has woken up to the world. And so, guys, in the subtitle, I said infinity plus one. I wanted to also speak about that. Infinity plus one is a very cool concept because it's still infinity. And so, infinity, we can also entertain this viewpoint that it's like there's this infinite manifestation, and our conscious attention is that plus one factor. So when we look at the objective meaning of life, don't worry about your atoms dying. They won't die. You know, what you are, if you take an objective, again, value of it, you're like, don't worry, atoms are atoms. But what makes these atoms significant seems to be a sort of unknown process. And when one tries to approach the unknown, that's another word for that is transcendence. All explorers are living for transcendence. They want to transcend the sight they had before to see something new. Live in a world where life is free before it is sculpted by dogma. I feel the point of sleep is to restart. And when we restart in the day, as we wake up to a new day, we are considering, how do I say it? Every day has a unique rhythm about it if you pay attention. Some days you're in the zone, things are great. Some days you're off rhythm, you know? You see it in movies, the guy's late for work, his coffee spills, he steps on gum, he forgets his keys. Like, but that person is off rhythm. That means he's not in the present moment. He's in the future, actually. And behind our eyes, it's so easy to time travel. It's like, I'm late for work. That dude is time traveling. He's trying to travel through time to get there quicker. So, I guess that's it for tonight's talk, guys. But if you want to engage, I do give usually a couple minutes of Q&A at the end where we can discuss ideas. Here I'm going to put question of the day. So, guys, that's the question. This is a concept I've dabbled with. Could infinity be indefinite? You know, see if you can give it an answer. And thanks for tuning in. Much blessings and namaste.